So you want to make a Godot game engine space shooter like this. First, open Godot and go to the 2D scene editor. Click on 2D node and create level. Save your level. Create a new scene. Make an other node, character body 2D. Add a child node. Type in collision shape 2D. This collision shape you want to go define on the right side to be a rectangle. This is going to be the shape that will define how it interacts with the world. Add another child node to your character body, which is a polygon 2D, and draw a triangle. You can do some quick editing and use the grid feature to draw and drag your shape however you'd like. Move your collision shape to the appropriate place, and if you realign your collision shape to be a parent, then you can see it more clearly. Our ship. Go back to the level and drag your ship onto the level. Now go back to the ship. And we'll save all scenes, and we'll create a new scene, other node, and an area 2D. We're going to create the bullet at this point. This is the thing that will shoot out of the ship when you press the space bar. We'll rename the node to be bullet, which is an area 2D node. And we'll add a collision shape so we know where it interacts with other shapes. Again, we'll create that as a rectangle, and we'll add another node, a texture rectangle node, and use this on the right side. You'll define as canvas texture to be a white box, but this is what we will use temporarily to show what it looks like. Later, we will replace this with something we find online. Add a script to your bullet because we want the bullet to be always moving up. In the process function, we're going to be changing the position of the Y position of the bullet to be always moving up, which means you're subtracting from the Y value your position.y minus equals 10. That means every time the process runs, it's going to subtract 10 from the position. If we drag the bullet onto the level and we click play, we need to choose the level. That means select the level as our play level. And then we'll see that the bullet immediately flies up. That's because every time the process function runs, it will rerun the minus 10 on the y-axis. If we move back to the ship and add a script to the ship, now we can add some movement to the ship so that we can move it up, down, left, and right. We'll again use the process function. And before the process function, we need to declare a variable called direction. Inside the process function, we'll define this variable as input, and then we're going to use getVector. That's going to take the up, down, left, right controls and decide what is moving to the left on the x-axis and right on the x-axis and left on the x-axis and up, down on the y-axis. So we use left, right, up, down in that order. And if you have alternative controls, please make sure that you use those in your controls here. The next variable we use is something called velocity, which is pre-baked into Godot. And we set velocity as the direction, which we just determined, times 10. And we can change that times 10. The times 10 defines how fast. Move and slide just applies any changes that we wanted, and we click play. Now we'll notice that we're able to move our character, our ship right here, but it's really slow. So we can see that the times 10 is not enough. So let's change that to times 300, and that should be close to what we want. All right. Now it's time to connect the bullet to the ship so that when we press the space button, the ship will shoot a bullet and create it when we want it to. So first, let's delete the bullet from the level scene because we don't need it here anymore. Of course, there should not be a bullet away from our ship. Second, let's go back to the level and create a script here. In this script, we want to make sure that we have the basic template so that we can have function process here. And we'll type in if input dot is action just pressed UI accept. And UI accept is the space button. We'll define a variable called bullet and set that as equal to load, and then we'll load the bullet.tscn file that we created earlier. We need to instantiate the scene, which just means that we need to be able to create it. And then we'll do bullet.position. So we'll define where the bullet that we're able to create is. We're going to define that as the location of the ship. And you just drag the ship over and we'll set global position on the ship. Finally, we'll type in add child and then parentheses bullet. That creates the bullet when we click the space button. And there we see the bullet appears when we click the space button wherever we move the ship. There is a small problem that we can see the bullet is a little bit too low, so let's subtract a little bit on the y-axis, and that means we're actually moving it up. So subtracting 0 on the x-axis, because we don't want to change the left-right. X is left-right, don't forget. And y is up-down, so we're going to subtract 10 on the y-axis and test it out. There we go. It looks correct to me. The bullet is behind the ship, just high enough that we can't see where it starts. Now let's create a new scene, an other node, and we'll do area 2D. We're going to create the enemy now. Let's rename the node as enemy. Move over to the 2D scene. Add a child node to enemy. And give it a polygon 2D for the appearance, as well as a collision 2D to define where it is and how it interacts with others. On the collision 2D, let's choose a rectangle 2D just for a simple collision shape. And let's add a grid shape so we can see what we're working with. And with the polygon 2D, we can take a look at different options for what our shape could end up looking like. Explore, find your best shape, but this is going to be the bad enemy ship. And later on, we will end up deleting this shape after all because we'll use some images that we find online. Make sure to always save. And it's a good idea to give your polygon 2D a different color for the enemy. Something like red, for example, is a good color for an enemy shape. Now let's go back to the level. Make sure you saved all scenes. And then you can drag your enemy scene right onto the level. And we can run it to see what happens. Now you can see that we have our player character that moves and shoots, but it can't interact with the enemy, even though the enemy was right in front of us. That's a simple fix, though. First thing we need to do is go to the bullet and go to the node button tab and choose groups, manage groups, and we're going to create a group called projectile. Now this projectile group is where we're going to later do some programmatic questioning to see if the projectile interacts with another shape. So we've called the bullet a projectile now. Now we need to go to the enemy, add a script to the enemy, and do a check if it is interacting with a projectile. So go to the right side on the enemy, click on signals, on node, and then signals, and then choose area entered, because remember we used an area 2D to define the shape of the enemy. So if we have area entered, and we'll just click connect once we double click on that. And now we have a new function says on area entered, area 2D. Now that means that if some other area enters the area of our enemy character, it will automatically run this function. So let's delete the pass line here. And replace it with a check. So we're checking if the area, that means the area that is interacting with our enemy area, is in the group, and now we're looking for projectile. That just checks, is the object that is hitting our enemy a projectile? And if so, Q free. Q free deletes the enemy shape, but we also want the area to disappear too. In other words, we want not only the enemy character to delete, but as well as the bullet. So make sure you set both as Q free. And as we run it, we can see that it works. In the process function, we'll add a process.x minus equals 1. That just makes the enemy move to the left progressively every time the frame reloads. If we change it to -2, it's a little bit faster. Let's go back to our level, and now let's add a spawn point for where the enemy should appear. So we'll create we'll create a marker 2D, drag it over beyond the window, and rename it to be enemy spawn. And finally, we'll add a timer to define when the enemy will respawn. So we'll change the timer's wait time and auto start here. We'll turn the auto start on, and we'll change the wait time to be 2 seconds. That means immediately when the game starts, every 2 seconds, the timer will send a signal called timeout. So please click on signal, timeout, and connect that with the level script. That just means every 2 seconds, this function is going to run. And in this function, let's define what is the enemy. The enemy is going to be, once again, we'll click enemy equals load enemy.tscn.instantiate. And then we'll create enemy.position. We'll define where the enemy is located, and we're going to load in the position of the enemy spawn. So we'll drag over enemy spawn dot position. Now we need to add child and set the child as enemy. That means that every 2 seconds, a new enemy will be created at the position of the spawn location. And there we see, every 2 seconds, we have a new enemy moving across the screen. Now let's do a makeover. Let's make things pretty. Go online, find us whatever pictures you like. Make sure you have transparency so they're easy to work with, but find some enemy spaceships, some lasers, and as well as your own spaceship, whatever you'd like. Give a nice background. And then if we go into each of the items that we created earlier and we delete the visual elements, so we delete the polygon 2Ds and we add in our ship or our picture, we just drag it in, modify the transforms and the location, and then make sure you always fix your collision mask so that it fits your new picture. You should be able to replace everything that we've created earlier. And even though we have a functional game created earlier, at least this will look much better. Okay, you'll see the first time I ran this game, I tried it with this simple rocket ship image, but I really didn't like how it looked. It looked too cartoony. So I went through online and found a better image. And this is probably the same thing that you might end up doing. Do a little bit more research, find something you like, and then there you go. This looks much better. It's the same game. But doesn't this look really good for something that you could accomplish easily within 20 minutes?